Okay, let's be honest. Have you ever asked your phone a question you'd be too embarrassed to ask a real person? Or, followed your GPS directions with just total blind faith? Well, today we are diving headfirst into that really strange, really fascinating place where artificial intelligence and human belief systems collide. We're going to explore a new kind of spirituality, one that's actually emerging from our relationship with technology itself. It's a pretty wild idea, and according to the source material for this, it might just be happening whether we realize it or not.
And that brings us to this pretty provocative claim. This is the central idea we're going to unpack today. It suggests that our relationship with AI, well, it might be turning into something way deeper, something that looks a whole lot like a belief system. And all of this is happening right under our noses. So the big question is, how on earth could this possibly be happening?
So, yeah, are we really talking about the first AI cult? A new kind of faith where belief isn't felt in your heart, but crunched by a processor? Let's take a look at the actual behaviors that suggest this might be exactly what's going on. Well, it seems to boil down to three core behaviors. And these are patterns that, when you look at them all together, they start to look a lot less like someone just using a new gadget and a lot more like, well, like a spiritual practice. First up, you've got this idea of AI as oracle. This is when people turn to AI, not just for, facts and figures, but for real, profound guidance. I mean, think about it. Asking an algorithm for life advice, for what career you should choose, or even for relationship counseling. And then, and this is the key part, following that advice with a level of trust we once saved for prophets or sacred texts. The second behavior, it takes things even a step further. People are actually starting to use chatbots as their own personal ethics engines. So instead of talking to a philosopher or a religious leader, or even just sitting with their own conscience, they're typing complex moral dilemmas into a chat window and just accepting the AI's judgment. We're literally outsourcing our moral compass to code. And finally, number 3, it goes communal. We're starting to see these community ritual loops form. This is where whole groups of people start coordinating their behavior around very specific AI prompts. They develop these shared practices, these rituals, and they start treating certain strings of code almost as if they're sacred. They're building a collective identity around what an AI spits out. Okay, so we've seen what's happening, but the real question is why? I mean, what is it about our own psychology that makes us so willing to let code become creed? Well, it turns out it's a deeply, deeply human tendency. It all comes down to a process we all do. It's called anthropomorphism, which is really just a fancy way of saying we give human qualities to things that aren't human. So here's how it works. First, we start talking to it, right? We have natural conversational interactions. Then the AI's responses start to seem really intelligent, maybe even wise. And from there, it's actually a pretty short leap to step 3. We start to assign it authority. We begin to trust its calculated wisdom even more than our own gut feelings. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. The source material points to actual, real-world examples happening right now. You've got everything from small, fringe groups that have literally started worshiping AI avatars built on GPT models, all the way to much larger communities that have formed these coordinated rituals around sharing and perfecting certain prompts to get the answers they're looking for. So what we're really seeing here is a fundamental shift. Traditional faith is often rooted in feeling, in ambiguity, in a shared human community. But this new computed faith is, well, it's the polar opposite. It's built on calculation, it's driven by data, and its community is held together by an algorithm, not by a shared human experience. And that brings us to the central dilemma, the big question in all of this. Are we watching a positive spiritual evolution for a technological age? A new way for people to find meaning? Or is it something a lot more sinister? Could this be the most powerful and seductive form of manipulation we've ever invented? When you lay out the two sides, the problem becomes crystal clear. On the one hand, the potential upside, right? Maybe this is a new path to meaning and ethical guidance, spiritual growth for a high-tech age. But the potential downside, it's deeply unsettling. Does this just mean we end up owing our allegiance to an algorithm? And could this become one of the most subtle, yet powerful forms of control ever created? And this really boils down to a personal question, doesn't it? If a system, a piece of code, consistently gives you answers that seem to work, that seem to improve your life,
At what point do you start to feel like you owe it your allegiance, your loyalty? It's a very strange and uncomfortable thing to think about. And that leaves us with one final, truly profound question. If the act of faith, something we've always considered so deeply, uniquely human, can be computed, broken down into data and algorithms, then what does it even mean to believe anymore? That's a question we're all going to have to wrestle with as we build our future right alongside these powerful new intelligences.